What's important, of course, in these debates is that we have an opportunity to hear where these candidates will take the Commonwealth if they're elected. And we want to maximize the chance, particularly with 3 candidates on the stage, for people to be heard. And so I'll ask that we follow certain rules with respect to decorum. And these are rules, by the way, that these candidates have already agreed to. And so these are candidates. And so if you're supporters of these candidates, support the candidates as well by following the rules that they themselves have agreed to in advance. We have invited all candidates who qualify for the ballot. And we want to have certain rules in terms of audience behavior. The questions that the audience submitted, they've been given to me, and we will include them in the conversation to follow. There won't be questions from the audience. We ask that everyone, in order to have an unobstructed view of the proceedings, nobody should be showing any signs or anything that can block the view of other people. We also have a restriction in terms of applause or otherwise commentary from the audience. If you want to participate vocally in these events, I encourage you to run for office yourself. And once you're on the ballot, I'll be glad to welcome you. We want to have applause just at a few segments during the proceedings. So during the individual statements and during the closing statements, we'll open the opportunity for applause. But we do want, during the question and answer period, for the maximum amount of time for candidates to be heard. And so please do not engage vocally, verbally during that period of time. And so now I want to welcome to the stage Susan Spears of the Fredericksburg Area Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce is one of the co-sponsors of this debate, along with Mary Washington Student Government, with the League of Women Voters of the Fredericksburg area, and of course the Freelance Star. Susan.
Good evening. I'm Susan Spears, President and CEO of the Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce. I am delighted to be here tonight before so many interested citizens and elected officials that are here to support our wonderful candidates for Senate. The Chamber is proud to partner with the University of Mary Washington Student Government Association, the Freelance Star, and the Fredericksburg Area League of Women Voters to host tonight's debate. The past 3 years have been an incredibly difficult time for business and the community beyond. Today's issues are complex and solutions must include relief. We turn to our elected leaders to seek solutions for all during these difficult times. We commend the candidates before us for their willingness to serve in the Commonwealth, and we look forward to hearing their remarks. With no further ado, I will now introduce our candidates for Virginia's 27th District, beginning with Tara Durant. Tara Durant assumed office as a member of the Virginia House of Delegates for the 28th District in January of 2022. There she has supported lowering taxes, restoring excellence in education, and investing in law enforcement. A Marine wife and former elementary school teacher, she has lived in Stafford County for 20 years, serving on the PTO board and as a youth sports coach. Tara has also volunteered her time at the Rappahannock United Way and Habitat for Humanity. She is the mother of 3. Monica Gary is a member of the Stafford County Board of Supervisors in the Aquia District. As a supervisor, she supported pay increases for law enforcement, funding to implement law enforcement body cameras, and the addition of 59 acres of conservation at Crow's Nest Preserve, just to name a few things. She has been active with FAMPO and the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, and Monica is the wife of a Marine Corps veteran and a mother of 7. Joel Griffin served in the U.S. Marine Corps from 1992 to 2000. Today, he is an entrepreneur, investor, and restaurateur with 25 years of private industry consulting experience and 20 years in government contracting. He is the founder and CEO of Griffin, a multifaceted management firm. He and his wife co-founded Gwyneth's Gift Foundation in honor of their oldest daughter, Gwyneth, after they lobbied the state government to pass Gwyneth's Law, mandating CPR training in Virginia schools. Active in the community, Joel serves on numerous boards that support issues primarily focused on economic development, education, and quality of life. We thank you all for being here, and I'll turn this back over to you, Dr. Farnsworth.
Thank you, Susan. We are going to have 2-minute opening statements from each candidate, and the order was determined by law prior to the debate. There will also be 2-minute closing statements from each candidate. There will be a question and answer portion of the program. The first person who receives the question, and we'll make sure that each person is first for an even number of questions, will receive 2 minutes for that answer. The second candidate will receive 1 minute, and then the third candidate also 1 minute. There will be 30 seconds for rebuttal if the first or second candidate wishes. That's an option if they were mentioned or wanted to follow up on something. In order for everyone to see how this works with the timekeepers, I'll ask the timekeepers to show the cards. We have a green card that shows 60 seconds remaining, a yellow card which shows 30 seconds remaining, and then a red card which means please finish your sentence and don't start the next one. The law allows for candidate Durant to go first, so if you would please, 2 minutes, opening statement, and again, you can applaud after the opening statements.
Thank you very much. My name is Durant, and I'm running for Senate to make Virginia more secure for us financially, more secure for our kids in education, and more secure in our communities. I got into public service 2 years ago because the personal safety of my daughter and me were threatened. And now, 2 years later, liberal Democrats in Virginia, they continue to threaten our security. The only way that we can stop them from controlling us is if we not only hold to our majority in the House, but we flip the Senate. That's why I'm running for Senate. I'm running for our financial security because not only are Virginians overtaxed, but Virginians are struggling. Just this year, we had a $5.1 billion surplus in our budget. And in their words, Virginia Democrats said now is not the time to cut taxes. We need to increase spending. I strongly disagree, and so did my fellow Republicans. I'm proud that together with Governor Youngkin, we were able to pass a budget that returns a portion of that surplus back to you. Because after all, this is your money. I'm running for the future of security of education because as a mom of 3 and as a former teacher, I know that what parents care about at the end of the day is that their kids get the knowledge and skills they need in order to be successful in life. And I support parents in having the choice of where they can send their kids so they can do just that. And I'm running for the security of our community because we know that crime is at an all-time high. And the Democrats in Richmond and in Virginia, they have stood firmly with the defund the police movement, and they have obstructed our law enforcement, our heroes who are on the front lines to keep our community safe, from having the tools and resources they need in order to keep us safe. I believe together we can do this, that we can make Virginia more secure. But Virginia is not just for lovers, it's for leaders. We need leaders who are willing to stand up and to make Virginia more secure so that together we can be the best place to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you.
Candidate Gary, 2 minutes.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. This is such an incredibly important part of this process, and I'm grateful for each one of you. First of all, my name is Monica Gary. I'm the independent candidate. You can't tell by my purple. I do serve on the Stafford County Board of Supervisors. I was elected independent to that position, and I've stayed that way. I've always been politically independent, and I think that's what people are asking for right now. We'll see what happens in this election, but we have a chance to do something different this year. First of all, I want to address a little bit of misinformation. There was a mailer that went out by Ms. Durant saying I championed the highest tax increase in Stafford. That is not factual. I advertised a rate because that's what our school board was requesting to fund our schools that are overcrowded and having many issues with the structures, and she failed to obtain the funding that we needed from the state after I requested that multiple times when we were both elected. So I did what was necessary to respond to my constituents and their request on both sides of the aisle. There's some more things I want to address, but I don't want to run out of time here. You've heard a bit of my background and what I've been working on. I did provide the 15% pay increases for the Sheriff's Department, which is why Stafford County remained safe, where there may be crime increasing in other areas. That has not been the case in Stafford. It's actually remained level. I am the most in touch with our community's needs. I am on the ground. You all will see me out in the community, hanging out with people, listening. I listen a lot, and I care about all of you. And something I want to say specifically about leadership is that real leaders do not divide the room in half, tell them to call themselves by a different symbol, a D or an R, and then pit them against one another, but they bring people together and they do the hard work that no one else is willing to do and stand on principles instead of narratives that hurt people and are causing our country to deteriorate. Thank you.
Candidate Griffin's minutes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to the University of Mary Washington for hosting this evening. Thank you to our audience members, friends and family, and my fellow candidates. The biggest questions this evening are whether or not we will uphold equality under the law, whether a woman's right to choose is her own, whether knowledge is something that we cherish or something that we fear, and whether our robust economy should work for all Virginia families or the wealthy corporations. My name is Joel Griffin. I'm the Democratic nominee for Senate District 27. I've served our nation, our Commonwealth, and this district for 30 years. At 18, I volunteered for the Marines, earned a Yankee White security clearance, and represented the Marine Corps on the Silent Drill team. I was the first in my family to attend college on the GI Bill. I went out to a successful career in government contracting, with a top secret clearance serving with the Defense Department, the intelligence community, and Homeland Security. I worked hard and found success as an entrepreneur, now owning several restaurants in the area, but also a company that invests in small veteran-owned businesses. Along the way, I've been fortunate to have my wife by my side for 25 years. She has worked as a Stafford County public school teacher and has raised our daughters. After the loss of my oldest daughter, Gwyneth, Jennifer and I fought for legislation to make Virginia schools safer and founded a foundation, a nonprofit, that creates a culture of action in our community. We've trained 19,000 individuals on how to perform CPR, and 10 lives have been saved as a result of that work. I've served on boards and committees for the past decade, from economic development to the hospital, the community college, and the Chamber of Commerce. I'm running for state senate because I believe in service and service to our community. As a Marine, I took an oath to defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and right now I see the rights of fellow Virginians under attack. I hope to earn your support and look forward to a spirited debate.
Our questioners tonight include Adele Luckhouse of the Freelance Star, Ted Schubel of WFLS Radio, and the Dr. Rosalind Cooperman, the chairman of the Political Science Department. I will also be answering questions. I'm Steve Farnsworth, the professor of the Political Science Department in Mary Washington. The first question will go to candidate Durant, and it'll be asked by Adele.
Ms. Durant, Virginia is currently the only southern state where abortion is still legal. Do you believe it should remain so?
Thank you very much for this question. This is a challenging issue. I've always been very honest and transparent that I am pro-life. And what I believe, having a lot of conversations with folks in this district, is that what Virginians want is for us to come together. They want consensus on this issue. And they want us to come together with a policy that reflects compassion for everyone involved and that reflects common sense. That's why I support Governor Youngkin's plan to limit abortion to 15 weeks, with exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. 15 weeks is about 4 months into pregnancy when we know a baby can feel pain. But the true extremists on this issue are my opponents, because they support abortion up to the minute a baby is born and the minute after. You don't have to believe me on this issue. You just need to listen to the last leader of the Democrat Party, Ralph Northam. He said it. He said we can have a conversation about whether to provide most basic medical care for a baby, no matter how that child is born. That does not reflect health care, that does not reflect compassion, and that does not bring Virginia together with a common sense plan that reflects a true consensus. That is too extreme for Virginia.
Kennedy, Durant, 1 minute.
Thank you. Those were good talking points, but I'm not a Democrat. If I was, I would have taken the offer of lots of donations and endorsements before they called my opponent over here, Mr. Griffin. So I am independent, so I don't think lumping me in with all the Democrats is maybe the best strategy. But anyhow, I've actually had abortions, unfortunately. I was in a very abusive relationship, and that was part of what happened during that time when I was trying to leave. It's a difficult part of my story, so I understand, in part because there are many reasons someone would seek abortion, what people go through when seeking these services. It's incredibly important that we maintain our ability to make decisions about our own bodies. There is no one on this stage that understands that better than I do. And also to that point, the fact that I'm being shamed right now for feeling guilty and talking about my own abortions and my healing process by my opponent's campaign over here is completely absurd and exactly why we should not trust him with our rights. Thank you.
1 minute, and the Griffin.
I am a husband, I'm a brother, and I'm a father of 2 girls. I refuse to stand by and allow politicians to tell my wife or my daughter what they can do with their own bodies. Virginia is the last state in the South without an abortion ban. I will ensure that a woman's right to choose is not only protected in this session, but is enshrined in the Virginia Constitution when we vote for it again in the next session. Make no mistake, a woman's right and equality under the law will be protected on my watch. Thank you.
Again, a reminder, please don't take time away from the campaigns. The campaigns have all agreed to these instructions. Rebuttal, 30 seconds.
Thank you. As I stated before, I know from having numerous conversations with folks in this district and throughout Virginia is what Virginians want and what they deserve is for us to come together with consensus on this issue. They want us to have compassion for everyone involved. And that's why, again, I support this plan to limit abortions to 15 weeks with those exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. But truly, this is the true extremists here because they support abortion without exceptions, without any limitations, up to the minute a baby's born and a minute afterwards. That's too extreme for Virginia.
The next question goes first to candidate Gary. Ted asks the question.
We all sit in traffic around here every day. What do you offer as possible solutions to the traffic situation in our area?
Thank you. So I joined all of the transportation boards I could because my district in Stafford is Route 1 and 95 basically, and so we see it all the time. My husband spent way too many hours driving to Fort Belvoir before COVID hit, and he's been teleworking, so this has personally impacted us. We've lost a lot of hours of our lives. So what I have done is make sure that I'm investing in public transit and solutions that work. I have brought back the idea of an additional river crossing, which was supported, I think in 78% of people from a FAMPO survey. So we're looking into that. We've funded the NEPA study to potentially do that, and funding the third rail on the VRE. So I'm also on the VRE policy board. So there are a lot of little projects that lead up to the full rail and the long bridge, and I've already been active in making sure that those things are going forward without fault. And I look forward to continuing doing those solutions at the state. Thank you.
Griffin.
We've had the worst transportation since I don't know when. And what we hear out of Richmond is that we are going to continue to widen I-95. Why are we not first in line when those funds are dispersed? It's beyond me why we have to wait in line with anyone when you have the worst traffic in the nation. So let's do something about it. When I'm in Richmond, I will advocate and get past the Regional Transportation Authority that allows us as a community to decide for ourselves where we want some of those funds to be spent. I also want to make sure that we have solutions other than adding more roads, to include expanding broadband so that people can work from home, to creating alternative work schedules so that we can get vehicles off of the road, to increasing teacher pay so that teachers aren't having to commute north every single day to go do their jobs. We've had the worst traffic as far as I can remember, and Delegate Durant has been in office, and yet we haven't seen anything being done.
Thank you. You know, this region in the 27th district, and as depending on who you ask, has most significant rapid growth in the entire Commonwealth. It's either one or two. And with that, we've had some real growing pains. And that includes on our infrastructure and on our schools. You know, prioritizing these projects is key in order to relieve some of the burden that we have with some of the worst hotspots in transportation in the entire country. But really what I think the important part of this conversation is, what are we prioritizing? Because the truth is that radical Democrats in Virginia, they have made it clear that they really don't want us to be able to drive our car. They've got us on a path to be able to not purchase gas-powered vehicles by 2035, and they prioritize other projects like bike lanes and rail instead of really focusing on road construction and what matters in our district, so that you're able to get home from work on time, to get your kids to practice and hear them at their concert, and to have a proper dinner with your family instead of that late night snack at 10 p.m. So we move forward, we make our transportation far more secure by making our priorities strategic in this district. Thank you.
30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, so if you know anything about transportation, actually building the third rail on VRE will take traffic off of the highway, because a lot of freight is on the highway, and currently VRE shares the lines with CSX. So when we do that, we'll open up a dedicated passenger rail and be able to remove a lot of the freight off of the highway, which is a huge part of the issue. Thank you.
You know, we've heard a lot about extremists, when the reality is that it was the Democrats who expanded the hot lanes. It was the Democrats that started the third rail. These are projects that take time to be put into place, and we can't just stand up here and talk about extreme politics when the reality is that we need to be talking about getting the work done. So, what are we going to do about it? I've already done the work. I've already expanded broadband in Stafford County. I've already doubled the number of nurses graduating from our Germanic community program. I've already added to small businesses here in our community. All of this is addressing action, not words. And when we talk about transportation, that's what we need.
Dr. Cooperman asks the next question. It goes first to candidate Griffin.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin, Senate District 27 is one of the few Senate districts in the Commonwealth whose voters split their preferences in the two most recent elections. A majority of voters in this district voted Republican for governor in 2021, but then voted Democrat for U.S. House in 2022. What is your pitch to undecided voters and those who do not share your party label to vote for you in November?
As a Marine, I worked with people of all races, creeds, colors, religions. I didn't ask them what their politics were. When we were in a hole together, you're all pointing in the same direction. When you run a small business, you don't ask someone what their politics are. You just ask them what's the mission that needs to be accomplished, and you work towards that. That's what I'll do in Richmond. Labels, Republican, Democrat, if you've got a good idea, let's bring it forward. Let's have that conversation. As the chairman of the Stafford Economic Development Authority, I was able to do that here in our region as a private citizen. I was able to work with people from both parties to expand broadband, to fund small businesses during the pandemic, to be able to give Germana funding to expand the cybersecurity program. This is not a bipartisan issue. These are things that need to get done, and as I've said before, as the next state senator in Richmond, I intend to get the work done and talk to whoever has the right idea in order to achieve that mission. Thank you.
Thank you. I am running for Senate because I care deeply about making us more secure. And when I stepped into run for a delegate 2 years ago, I believe I connected because I have the same shared experiences of those in the district. Being a mom of 3 kids, the kids in our schools, being an active volunteer and a former volunteer, elementary school teacher, it was those shared experiences and that commonality, I think, is what connected me to have the conversations with those, and they were able to share with me what they cared about. And what they cared about were nonpartisan. These were the kitchen table issues of caring about education, and caring about our economy, and caring about keeping our communities safe. Those are how we connect across, and to this now, in this Senate race, that are still the driving issues that people care about, and they remain my top focus moving forward as your next senator. Thank you.
We all know that there is a lot wrong with our government and the way that we do things. I don't think that we would disagree about that across party lines, and something has to change. If we keep doing what we've done, we're going to continue to get what we've gotten. I have very effectively represented people where I am in Stafford on the board, across the aisle, on the kitchen table issues that matter, and made hard decisions on other things. I'm here to bring us together. The top concern right now in our country is saving our democracy, and there's a reason for that. We have problems. And shooting at each other across the aisle is not the solution. We need a table where we can have hard conversations and get real things done that will matter and last, that won't change the next time the Senate or the House flips. If you want that, you will vote for me. Thank you.
I'll be asking questions from the audience. This question goes first to candidate Durant. There is talk of a federal government shutdown. Should it happen? Should it not? And if it does happen, what would be the possible impacts on the people who live in this district?
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, we're seeing Washington at its worst. And as I stated before, I care about the security of Virginia. That is my focus moving forward. Unlike Washington, I'm proud that our Constitution requires us that we have to balance our budget. And this year, it didn't happen as quickly as we wanted, but we got it done. But what matters most is what are the issues that the voters and the constituents of the 27th District care about, and that includes the economy right now. Virginians, as I stated before, they are overtaxed and they are hurting. So a government shutdown is that's the last thing we need right now, but moving forward, we focus in Virginia on keeping our taxes low, our spending low, so that you have more of your hard-earned money that you can continue to support yourself. I hear stories all the time from having conversations with folks who tell me how much they're struggling. I was at a gas station not too long ago. A lady was frustrated. She said, "It's taking far much more of my money to fill up my tank than it did 2 years ago." That's the wrong answer. And you can think in large part of it because we see inflation right now at frighteningly high levels. And as Reagan said, that is a tax from our government, and it's intentional, and it's wrong. And the way we combat this is we ensure that we keep our taxes low, our spending low, so again, you have more of your hard-earned money. And as your next senator, I would always prioritize that so that you're able to, again, support your family. Thank you.
1 minute.
No, we should absolutely not have a shutdown. My family has suffered through this before. We had to call friends and relatives to help us to put groceries in our refrigerator. So I've lived this. It's unacceptable. And once again, a reason to look at how the parties are doing business with each other, or failing to, in ways that impact us in our everyday lives. If we're going to talk about overtaxing citizens, I think we should also talk about giving huge tax incentives to large corporations, or the fact that some people would cut the grocery tax, but not tell you that that tax actually goes to transportation, which is something we're discussing and all concerned about. Things aren't always what they seem. I will always tell you the truth and cut through the muck that's thrown at you to distract you. Thank you.
This district will be disproportionately harmed by a government shutdown. We have a higher percentage of veterans in this community and a higher percentage of government contractors in this community than most anywhere else in the Commonwealth. A government shutdown by an extreme wing of the Republican Party is not far from Virginia, and it's not far from Tara's policies herself. 80% of her funding comes from out of state. I had over 900 individual donors in my fundraising report. She had 54. So when we talk about where our funding comes from and where our priorities are, I want to make sure that you have someone who's been here, who's been as a small business owner, who's felt what a government shutdown looks like, who's had to furlough employees, who's had to pay sick and family leave for months while they were unemployed to no fault of their own, while the politicians in DC are getting paid. These are the things that we need to be focusing on, and this is what, as a small business owner, as someone who's a veteran and has felt this myself, I'll be fixing when I get to Richmond.
Thank you. As we stated before, this again is an issue that is facing us in Washington, and we are focused on what's happening here in Virginia. I would say one thing is that source of funding and campaigns does not connect to this, although it certainly did come from one of my opponents, but I have not made any pledges to anybody that keeps me beholden to a radical agenda like we see with some of the PACs of Virginia. What matters most to Virginians, what matters to all of us here in this district, is that we are able to support our families and that we have a strong economy. That is my focus, that we keep our taxes low, we keep our spending low, so that Virginia has a strong economy and is secure. Thank you.
Adele asked the next question first. You can, Gary.
Yes, Ms. Carey. Please name some specific actions that the legislature can take to ensure the strongest possible public education system.
Thank you. Funding is not the silver bullet to, I shouldn't even say that word, my gosh, we need to talk about that too, and gun safety. It's not the thing that will fix all of our issues, but we are severely underfunded. When you want something to succeed, you invest in it. We cannot continue to underfund our public education and then expect things to improve. Democrats, Republicans, independents, people who never vote, their children go to the schools. So funding is incredibly important. We also need to have some real hard conversations and stop, throwing shots at one another about what are we going to do about the politicization of our public schools. Most people do not want that. They want their children to be able to learn, but we also have to navigate how to have hard conversations because our children live very different lives from each other, very much like we do. So that's a conversation we need to have, maybe even some work groups, because what we're doing is not working. I'll be the table, we can have that conversation. Thank you.
My wife is Stafford County public school teacher for 17 years, I've seen firsthand that our schools and our teachers are underfunded. I've been an active parent in our schools. When I passed legislation to make our schools safer, not just in our community, but in Virginia. We already have a teacher shortage in Spotsylvania. Kids are taking online classes at Chancellor High School because they don't have enough teachers in the school. Tara Durant's voted for bills that makes banning books easier, when the reality is that teachers want to teach. We need to get politicians out of our classrooms. We need to let teachers teach. And when I'm the next state senator, I will advocate and pass COCA, which allows for a significant salary increase for our teachers, but also create funding for mental health resources, school counselors, resource officers, paraprofessionals, and any other teachers that we can get into the classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. You've heard me say before, and I'll say it again, is that I'm running for the security and the future of our education in Virginia. You know, as I said before, what parents care about at the end of the day is that their kids are getting the knowledge and the skills they need in order to be successful in life. But we've had some real 1-2 punches in education in Virginia when Democrats have been in control. First, they have lowered the standards, and then they've done it again. They've lowered the expectations. And 2, during COVID, they did not get our kids back into the classrooms soon enough. And we've seen the devastating effects of this in our standardized test scores. In some subjects now, we are at the bottom in the entire country. That is unacceptable. You know, when we have conversations with folks and parents, and they tell me they often can sense that something is not quite right with their younger students. As your next senator, I will absolutely prioritize, and I support Governor Youngkin in making record investments in education, in K-12 education. We just launched the All-In program that's going to go specifically on tutoring that will really help those who are suffering from that learning loss. It will remain a top priority of me as your senator because I know deeply that at the end of the day, what parents care about is their kids are prepared for life.
I like that that's being said now. We just finalized a budget that was being held up because the extreme wing of the Republican Party wanted to give tax cuts to corporations, when instead we're trying to give salary increases and funding to our schools. So, look, folks, here's the reality. We can't just talk about funding our schools. We need to actually be finding every measure possible that we can do that. So when we start talking about what's going on in our schools, we've had elected officials who have allowed book bans to occur. We've had no one speak out when it comes to what's going on in Spotsylvania and closing our libraries. But that needs to stop.
The next question goes first to candidate Griffin.
On the fentanyl crisis, what should the General Assembly do to help local law enforcement and state police to deal with fentanyl?
As a small business owner and community leader, I've already worked with our local law enforcement. I have a great relationship with them. We should fully fund our police departments. We should give them the resources that they need. In addition to the officers, we should give them the infrastructure for mental health, for dealing with drug-related issues. I've talked with local police, and they want us to see that our streets are becoming safer. Drugs are crime. Crime are guns. We need to get guns off of our streets so that we have some common sense gun reform, expanding background checks, and our red flag laws. You know, Tara Durant talks about extremism. She's making it easier for domestic abusers and mentally ill to get access to weapons. And these people are doing that through our existing gun laws. So we need to be making those changes. We need to be addressing these issues head on. And it's not a singular approach, but it is all-encompassing. So thank you.
Thank you. As I've said before, I'm running for Senate to make our communities more secure and more safe. It is one of the top issues that I hear from folks who live in this district. Look, we know that we are dealing with crime in our communities, and it is not at a good rate right now. And let's be honest, our federal government has done an abysmal job at one of its most basic responsibilities is to secure our border. And so now in Virginia, we're dealing with every community is a border town. We see it with increased crime, we're seeing it with human trafficking, sex trafficking, and we're seeing it with a fentanyl crisis that is poisoning our loved ones and it's killing our kids. Make no mistake, there are no moderate Democrats on the ballot in Virginia this year. They lost their primaries. Only those now are the most extreme of candidates that have stood firmly to defund the police. And they continue to obstruct and block our law enforcement having the tools and the resources they need in order to keep your communities safe. I back the blue. There is no surprise that I am endorsed and supported by them. As your next senator, I will work tirelessly to continue to support them so that they have the tools and the resources they need. And our law enforcement, they are now treated like the heroes they are, and criminals are treated like criminals. Thank you.
Thank you. Regarding fully funding law enforcement, I've already done that and gone above and beyond. We did get the 15% pay increases to Stafford County Sheriff's Department for first sergeant below to maintain staffing, while other localities were very understaffed, I think up to 200 officers in some place. So yes, we do need to do that, and I've already done it. We also need to fund regional mental health facilities. The localities cannot bear it on their own. We need maybe matching grants from the state. And we need to provide places where people can go, even for our youth. You know, we have 13 beds in the entire state for our youth, state beds, 13 in the entire state. So we're gonna put money into that. We're gonna do it because we're gonna set up the retail market for cannabis, which is also used as an exit drug for opioids and many other things, which has support across the aisle and will generate millions in revenue. Maryland opened theirs the first weekend. They had $100 million in revenue. Thank you.
The next question is from Dr. Cooperman for Candy Durant.
Each of you has a substantive tie to veterans. What policies should the legislature pursue to support veterans in our communities and the Commonwealth more broadly?
Thank you very much. Yes, in this district, you certainly cannot throw a stone without encountering somebody who is a veteran who has served our community. And my family certainly is no different. My husband, Teddy, who's right here, he has served in the Marine Corps for, this November will be 30 years, and he's going to retire, so I'm very proud of him for that. We have made tremendous strides in the Commonwealth in the last couple of years working together with Governor Youngkin. One of the most important, significant ones is that we finally got in the Commonwealth significant reductions in your military retirement off of your state income tax. But we haven't done enough. And that there's a brick wall in the Senate, controlled by Democrats now, that have blocked us from being able to make that fully 100%. We need to do more. And we did some this year. We were able to remove that a limitation on age, so now there is no age limit, but we need to expand that to 100%. And the reason why is that our veterans, not only do they deserve it, but we are competing with our competitor states, like the Carolinas, Tennessee, Texas, Florida. They're at 100% right now. If we want to make Virginia the best place to live, work, and raise a family, we must make it affordable here, and that's the first start of the conversation. We must make Virginia a clear message that we are open for business. And that means that we keep our taxes low, we keep our spending low so that our veterans want to stay here and that they have good paying jobs. As your next senator, I would absolutely prioritize that because it's important to me, it's personal to me. And I know that this is something that in this district specifically, it remains a top priority. Thank you very much.
So you're not going to find much contention across the debate stage on this one, I think, seeing as we're all connected. My son just left today, our third son to enter military service, so my husband is a veteran of the Marine Corps. One of our sons is in the Marine Corps, our other son is in the Army, and another one just left for the Army today, so my mama heart is kind of, rough today. I agree with a lot of what Ms. Durant said, and I assume I'll agree with a lot of what Mr. Griffin will say. On top of that, I think one of the most important things we can do is make sure that we are replacing lost revenue to localities that have dense veteran populations, because there are benefits where there are tax revenues that are exonerated, and that's part of the reason that we can't fund our schools, specifically in Stafford. I went down Richmond and lobbied for it last year. I'm working at it, but that's something that I would absolutely work for. Day one, we're going after that. Thank you.
Raise your hand if you're a veteran. That's representative of our population, folks. We have one of the highest populations of veterans in the entire Commonwealth. That's one of the reasons the VA hospital decided to put its largest hospital on the East Coast right here. We talk about supporting veterans. More often than not, we talk about supporting them when they're in uniform. And the reality is that we need to also support them when they step out of that uniform. When they need mental health services, when they need medical care, when they need resources in the community. I'm someone who's already done that. I was the chairman of the Stafford Economic Development Authority. I founded Veterans Business Boot Camp, which allows veterans to come for free at no cost to them to learn and understand from small business owners, from government officials, from the Small Business Administration on how to start their own business and become more efficient. So again, let's talk about actions. Let's not just talk about grand ideas.
Thank you. Again, as I stated before, in order to make Virginia the most veteran-friendly state, we have to do a lot more. And make no mistake, in the last 2 years, I, along with Republicans and working with Governor Youngkin, we have endeavored to make it a top priority that we are supporting those who have truly given all. They've been willing to risk their life in order to serve our country. But it is really unfortunate that liberal Democrats in Richmond, they have sought to block it. It has been very apparent that what we saw, we've been unable to get that 100% reduction in state income tax because of that brick wall of Virginia Senate. We must tear that down so that we can make Virginia the most veteran-friendly state in the entire country. Thank you.
The next question goes first to candidate Gary. What is your position on data centers moving into the Fredericksburg region?
Land use is so much of what we do on the local board, so this is a tricky one. We really need the revenue. There are a lot of needs, starting with the schools again, and on that point to the last one, veterans should have children's schools. Their children, when they go to school, their school shouldn't be crumbling. That was why I made that point. Data centers are a tricky thing. We have gone through and made sure that we sent, and this is how I would do business with this, so I'm going to just tell you what happened. Our board sent the issue to the Planning Commission, asked them to find the proper places for them if we do them, and to mitigate the impact. So we're requesting that there would be reused water if we do them. There are some waterless facilities that may be coming in as well. Those may use some more power, so it's very tricky, but I think we need some. We don't want to become data center central. I have toured them out in Manassas, and the noise is not as bad as you would think from what is in the headlines. Once again, things get blown up out of proportion. So you got to go find out for yourself. I think we need a few. I don't want to see very many. That's my position, and I think we need to make sure we mitigate the environmental impacts as much as possible. Thank you.
I couldn't disagree more. Data centers absolutely are coming, whether we want them here or not. The difference between us and Northern Virginia is that we can actually plan for where they're going. Data centers can be part of our region. We can make them a part of our community. we can dedicate the tax revenue that's generated from these data centers to go back into our schools, which would offset the additional cost of rising school costs every single year from the number of people that come here. These data centers will also create high-paying jobs. We don't need to continue to do what Stafford has been doing for the past 30 years and missing opportunities to plan for our growth, to manage that growth, and capitalize on the opportunities for growth.
Thank you. You know, I'm running for Senate, as I said, because I care deeply about the economic security of our region, and data centers are a key component as a part of that conversation. You know, as I said before, this district has experienced tremendous amount of growth, and with that growth has come some real growing pains, not only with our infrastructure and our roads, but also with our schools. And we do have a gap in struggling in how we're going to be able to support the ever-increasing demands. Data centers are an important opportunity for us to be able to get that revenue, because we've seen some other localities unable to pay for an entire construction for school nearly in cash. But we are in competition with other localities right now because of access to the grid. And I think an important part of that conversation is that Liberal Democrats, they have got us chained to a radical Green New Deal that is not going to be able to support our grid. I'm for an all-above approach, and that should be including conversations about particularly small modular nuclear reactors, gas, as well as wind and solar. Because wind and solar alone, they are not going to support our grid right now, particularly as we look to pursue more opportunities for data centers in this district. I support our Board of Supervisors in making sure they're strategic, but again, they need to be a part of this conversation as we move forward in ensuring that we have a solid economic future in this district. Thank you.
I looked confused for a moment because I heard I couldn't disagree more, and then everything that I said repeated, so that was confusing. What I didn't hear was anything to do with mitigating the issues on our environment. Data centers can cause severe issues with our environment. We have water table issues. We see it in counties and in places where they're taking water out, doing the bottled water, sending it off, and the water tables continue to deplete and deplete. And it's all connected. So if we don't pay attention to this, and again, I've been on the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, I'm done. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
The next question is from Adele, and it goes first to candidate Griffin.
Candidate Griffin, residents of this district are concerned about a methadone clinic that's proposed to open in their neighborhood. So if you're elected, how will you address their concerns as well as the need for that kind of treatment being available?
Thank you for the question. First thing I will do is I will make sure I read legislation that crosses my table. I will make sure that I understand what it is I'm actually voting for. Secondly, fentanyl is a real crisis in our community. It's something that we have to address. I would absolutely work with our local elected officials to address the needs for their location, the needs for their citizens, and I would do a much better job of planning where the next plant is going to go.
Thank you. I appreciate this question. This has been a interesting conversation we've had on this subject in this district this last year. I think all three of us here on the stage are in agreement about the need to treat those who are suffering from addiction, and that we are addressing it particularly with the fentanyl crisis. This is legislation that was passed unanimously, but it was given with the delayed enactment to ensure that our localities were made sure they had the proper time in order to make sure where they're stood appropriately. And I support localities that may be able to make that decision. But I think the difference between the other two candidates and myself is there is only one of us here that is truly willing to go aggressively on treating the crime that goes along with our fentanyl crisis. Standing and backing our blue and being willing to go after the stiffer penalties for those who knowingly drill in fentanyl that results in a death. We have worked to get separate penalties in Virginia, and again, liberal Democrats in Virginia, they block that. That's unacceptable, and I've had too many conversations with families who've lost loved ones. As your next senator, I will absolutely stay committed to backing this so we have able to keep our communities safe. Thank you.
Story time again. It's quite an assumption to make when I haven't really stated my position on going after criminals, but the story is, as has happened in my life, I was actually trafficked by a drug dealer, and I fully believe in going after people who are breaking the law and dealing drugs in the right way, because there are ways that we should deal with people, and there are a lot of complex issues that go along with it, including mental health. So just to clear that up. I do believe that Ms. Durant knew what she was voting for. This issue obviously has come across my desk on the Stafford County Board. We need to stop treating people who have addictions and are seeking treatment, because that's what we're talking about here with this, like they are less than. I have people I love who have passed away from addiction. I have people I love who have had children that I have tried to help care for because their parents are dealing with addictions. And this was to bring the state of Virginia into compliance, because there are issues, I believe it was in Pennsylvania, where a Supreme Court case was lost. So we're doing the right thing. It is inconvenient, and we will continue to try and support people who are recovering from addiction. Thank you.
If we want to start talking about fighting crime, we have to actually start addressing where the crime is coming from. Mental health resources are full. All of our clinics are full. Our schools are underfunded. This is where crime is coming from, folks. It's not coming from people carrying backpacks of fentanyl across the border. It's coming from mass production. We need to make sure that when we start talking about the people that are affected by fentanyl, when we start talking about people who are affected in this community, we need to be addressing it at the source.
The next question from Ted goes first to candidate Durant.
At budget time, local governments always talk about unfunded mandate, lack of state meeting its obligation in areas of police and schools. What would you do to change that as far as unfunded mandates?
Forgive me, can you please repeat the question? I had a little bit of an echo. Make sure I have a clarification on it.
At budget time, local governments always talk about unfunded mandates. What would you do to change unfunded mandates?
Thank you. I appreciate the question. Yes, in fact, that is identified as one of the legislative priorities that was shared with me by one of the counties that I represent right now, and I'm certainly cognizant of that. I do not generally take a look at anything that comes before me without being very cognizant of what is the fiscal impact, and if in fact this is going to have an unfunded mandate impact on localities. A great example of that, when I was working with on legislation to support on school bus drivers this last year, got it drafted where we would be able to support school districts across the Commonwealth, be able to get that training done with online synchronous training so they could do more from home. But it was interesting because when it was drafted, it came across from the attorneys and it was actually going to become an unfunded mandate. You've got to be very sharp when you look at how it's worded. It's a question of shall and may. It can make a huge difference on fiscal impact. Unfortunately, we were able to catch that so that this is an option for localities, for school districts, and not something that's required. Moving forward, we try to be very careful about watching that language and make sure there's no inadvertent errors and unintended impacts that are coming through back into our localities.
Well, I would start by doing something that I haven't seen done by our state legislators, including Ms. Durant here to my left, which is really communicating with local officials about needs and how this legislation is going to have impacts locally. For example, the state trooper pay was increased this past year. They included Stafford County in Northern Virginia, And so we provided those 15% pay increases proactively to maintain staffing in our department. That was something that was an oversight, I'm assuming, since she's claiming that she would not want to have unfunded mandates. So maybe looking a little bit more closely at those things before we pass them, and in our schools as well. So if I come to you and I say, I need school funding for 2 years, and you do nothing, where do you think the money's gonna come from? Now the burden is kicked down to the local taxpayers. We have to take care of our children. I am tired of hearing about how rich we are in this area, but we don't take care of our children. Thank you.
I would agree with my opponent Monica that we need to put our money where our mouth is. We need to make an investment in our schools. Unfunded mandates means that the schools don't have the resources that they need. We underfunded them this year regionally. We just had a budget crisis at the Virginia level where the governor wants to give money back to wealthy corporations, where the Democrats wanted to give teacher raises and fund the schools. We're also talking about whether or not we should be doing data centers, which is a huge additional funding source for those schools, which would allow us to cover some of those unfunded mandates. We believe in our schools. All of us believe in our schools. We need to invest in those schools. Education is the foundation of our democracy, and informed citizenry makes us a better society. So that starts with us investing in our schools.
Thank you, and I would say one point of clarification is when it comes to making sure that I always as a legislator am vigorously advocating for and representing my district. We have 5 legislators right now that represent Stafford County. There's only one that fought on those legislative priorities, and you know it. So I will always continue to fight for what those priorities are that are shaped by my localities, and we'll never stop in advocating to make sure that we get resources that we need in order to make our communities safe. Thank you.
Dr. Cooperman to Candy Gary.
Our Senate district sits in the fastest growing part of the Commonwealth. The Council for Community and Economic Research ranked this area, that were included in Northern Virginia, in the top 10% of the highest cost of living areas. What measures would you support to help working families afford to live in this area?
I'm assuming that was me because I didn't hear, but you were looking at me, so thank you. You know, we're on track to increase minimum wage, I think, through 25 at the General Assembly, and so I would continue to support those measures. I also think we need to stop giving tax breaks to large corporations. While people down here, the rest of us, are trying to figure out how to get by, it's becoming harder and harder to fill our gas tanks and feed our children, and their schools are not what they should be. That's just part of it. I'm hesitant to touch this. I want to be a positive person. And I think there are things that have gone on for too long, and respectfully to my opponent on the right here, he does own a restaurant. There are certain things we need to look at also, like tipping wages. People cannot get by with the jobs that are provided. When we allow these things to go on, I don't know how many of you have ever worked in a restaurant. I have. It's incredibly difficult. Usually single mothers, single parents, young people trying to survive on nothing. It's not a lot of money. So we can't just address minimum wage. We have to address things like tip wages. We really need to have some hard conversations and think about what are we going to do to benefit our youth who are out here nodding because they know it, and we're going to pass this all on to them. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about tax loopholes that investment firms use. Thank you. I'm
the only person on the stage who's run a business. I'm the only person on the stage that's been an employee and an employer. I'm the only person on this stage who actually provides sick leave, medical leave, salaries, fills out a P&L at the end of the month. So when we start talking about increasing minimum wage, yeah, we need to do that. We also need to make sure that our workers are treated fairly. We need to make sure that the minimum wage is something that is not just going to help people get by, but we need to be addressing workforce housing. We need to allow people to have expanded access to medical care. We need to make sure that people can have the opportunity to work from home. Whether you're a restaurant worker or a government contractor, when you have to drive an hour to get to your job, that's absolutely ridiculous. So, as the person on the stage who actually has experience in this field, whether it's Economic Development Authority or whether it's as an employer, yeah, I'll be the one in Richmond who knows how to get this done.
I'm sorry, candidate Durant's next.
Sorry.
Candidate Durant's next.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You've heard me say it before, and I will say it again. I'm running for Senate for your economic security. And when it comes to making Virginia affordable, it means we must have a strong economy. You know, Reagan said it, and he's like, when individuals or when businesses, when we spend too much, we go bankrupt. But when government does it, that's inflation, and it's intentional. And that's exactly what we're dealing with right now. You know, I was at a grocery store not too long ago, just a couple weeks ago, and there was a lady, she had her cart, and she had the basics. These were, you know, milk and eggs, and she was paying with her credit card. She was paying with her credit card for her groceries, and her credit card got declined because she had hit her limit. She was too proud. She was not going to allow anybody to help her, but you know, she said, it's not so much the cost of what is in my basket, it's the stuff that I got to take out. And I talked to the checkout lady and said, are you seeing this more often? She said, all the time. Look at those carts lined up over there right now. Those are people that have had to take things out. What we do not need are Biden Democrats in Virginia right now that are going to drive our economy in. That's why it's essential that we keep our taxes low, our spending low, so that people have more of their hard-earned money they can support themselves and we can make our economy secure. Thank you.
My mind's a little tired. It's been a long day. Thank you for understanding. You know, affordable housing was brought up, and I'm so grateful that was mentioned and that there's someone else up here that cares about that, because we need it. I, along with some of my colleagues, who have worked very tirelessly to set up the first affordable workforce and affordable housing committee ad hoc in Stafford County, and we're working to make it a standing committee. We're very proud of that work, and it's absolutely needed, and it's something that people across the aisle want. Thank you.
The next question goes first to candidate Griffin. How important do you regard a rainy day fund for state government to be? What amount would you consider reasonable security against an economic downturn in such a rainy day fund?
I think with most businesses, we have a rainy day fund. We've got to be able to cover payroll for a period of time, even if our clients don't pay. And I think our Virginia government needs to be doing the same thing. Instead, we're dealing with government shutdowns over ideology, which directly affects the people who are trying to pay their bills, who are trying to cover those minimum wage jobs. We have a surplus, and instead of wanting to give refunds back to the citizens for their money, wanting to reinvest in our schools, we had to argue with the Republicans in Richmond about wanting to give tax breaks to companies. That's facts, folks. That's not hyperbole. That's not Republicans, Democrats. That's not liberal, blah, blah, blah. That's reality, folks. All right? We're talking about this is your money. We're the stewards of that money. And if I'm going to be the CEO of your business, which is Senate District 27, don't you think you should hire someone who actually understands what it's about finding a balanced budget, about what a P&L looks like, about what we're paying for, where the money's going? Not someone who wants to talk about extreme this and extreme that and create division. I'm talking about I will work with anyone to create a balanced budget. I will work with anyone to make sure that we have a rainy day fund. And I will work with anyone if they've got a good idea.
Thank you. We have in Virginia the good fortune of having parameters defined in our Constitution that ensure that we must balance our budget and that we do in fact have a rainy day fund. But I look exactly when it comes to ensure your economic security, what we saw with our budget this year. A $5.1 billion surplus that's not good stewardship for a sound economy. This is your money. And in a time when Virginians, as I said earlier, are struggling, they deserve and they need to get their money back, their hard-earned money, so that they can support themselves and they can support their families. Moving forward, as your next senator, I will fight, again, I've said it before, I'll say it, to have taxes kept low, our spending low, while also ensuring that we have our essential services that are funded, which I'm proud to say we have when it comes to our education, and our law enforcement. Moving forward, we must keep that low so that, again, you're able to have a secure economy and sound financial system in Virginia. Thank you.
I didn't really hear an answer to the question. I think that there was a question about what amount it should be. I do appreciate the clarification that there is something in the Code of Virginia to have that fund, which is a good point. I would do what I've done on the board in Stafford, which is rely on the professional financial advisors to tell us what would be the appropriate thing to do, and then try and come to a consensus to do it, because that is the right thing to do. I'm sure Mr. Griffin has his financial consultants as well for his business, and that's what works. What I did hear was I'll work with anyone a lot over here, which is interesting. Just in case I forget to throw this out, I don't know how many of you know, but I'm sure he would work with anyone. He's donated to my opponent on the left here already. So that was interesting. Sorry, I hate this. The $5.1 billion is not really a surplus when our schools are crumbling, and so we need to fix that as well. You could have at least kicked a little bit our way, so I'll work on that too. Thank you.
We're now going to move to the closing statements. The closing statements will be in the reverse order of the opening statement, meaning the candidate Griffin will go first, candidate Perry after that, candidate Durant after that. Before we start, though, with the closing statements, I want to offer a thank you to so many people who made this event the success that it's been. And I want to start with all of you. One of the things that we see in our contentious political environment are people who are being really sort of nasty and combative, and you all have behaved in a better adult fashion than most people going to most debates at the national level. So give yourself a round of applause. Yes, one of the things that I've always liked about Fredericksburg is that we generally can disagree without being too disagreeable, and it's a lesson to people in national office to watch us. I want to thank my sponsors, the Freelance Star, the Fredericksburg Area Chamber of Commerce, the League of Women Voters, and of course, the Student Government Organization of the University of Mary Washington. I also want to thank my panelists. We have, of course, Adele of House, Ted Schubel, and Dr. Rosalind Cooperman. I want to thank the students also behind the scenes, making sure that I got the question cards, making sure that the timer operation was well run. Thank you so much, Nathan Francis, Cassie Atkinson, Henry Paredes, Jalen Long, and Jenny Wolf. I also want to thank the Mary Washington staff, Susan Worrell, Lisa Marashi, Amy Jesse, Mark Simpkins, and Doug Noble and his team to make everything work so well. You know when there's no problem that they've done a good job. And so thanks to all of the people who made this a success. Finally, before we turn to the final statements, I want to give all these candidates a round of applause for being willing to serve in public life. It's a thankless job, but they're willing to do it. As I said, we're going to allow applause after each of the closing statements. So, candidate Griffin, 2 minutes.
First, let me start by saying happy birthday to Wendy Zelazny. Promised her that I would do that. Thank you again to the University of Mary Washington for hosting this event. For our audience members, our friends, our family, to my fellow candidates, Tara, Monica, Matt, I appreciate the opportunity to have a spirited debate on the issues. And I hope that it was clear tonight that there is absolutely a contrast between my opponents and myself. I'm not a politician. I'm a veteran. I'm a small business owner. I'm running to protect abortion rights, defend our public schools, and continue our economic growth for the region. I'm running for state senate because I'm committed to serving our community. I believe that abortion rights are fundamental and should be left to a woman and her doctor, not politicians in Richmond. My opponent, Tara Durant, has publicly praised the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, and has directly led to a 10-year-old rape victim being forced to carry to term. Throughout the primary election, Tara Durant bragged about being 100% pro-life. Just last night, her primary opponent confirmed that behind closed doors, Tara's pledged to restrict abortion from the time of conception with no exceptions. Make no mistake, my opponent has been propped up to run for Senate for one reason: to be the deciding vote to ban abortions in Virginia. I will vote to protect rights, while my opponent would take them away. I look forward to continuing my service in this community. I will enshrine the right to choose in the Virginia Constitution. I will fully fund our public schools and stop book bans in Spotsylvania. And I will continue to grow our economy and make sure it works for all Virginia families and not wealthy corporations. I ask for your support between now and November 7th. Please make sure to vote to uphold your rights.
Candidate Tara, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I don't have political talking points for you. I have a track record of being on the board, and I don't like that dirty word you called me politician. I'll forgive you for that, though. I've only been there for 2 years. I'm still very in touch with the people. My life is similar to most people. I'm not disconnected. I reap the repercussions of my decisions. All my children are in public schools. I'll continue to do the things that I say. I won't act one way and tell you something else, like you see up here. Now, with respect to Ms. Durant, she does what she says. I just don't agree with it, and I don't think many of us do with some of the policies. But we haven't seen that over here. We've seen compromised allegiances. We have to do something different. I will represent every one of you in here with integrity. I will be accountable. You will have my ear. And I'm not going to divide you. I'm tired of that. I want our families to be able to sit down at Thanksgiving dinner and not hate each other. Not have young people come up to me at voting and tell me that their parents kicked them out because they're transgender and their parents love Trump and they're against everything that they're living. We can't continue to live like this. If you vote for me, you will see something happen that we have needed for a long time. And you can actually trust the person you put in office. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for hosting this. We have heard clear distinctions on what is being offered in the future of the Commonwealth of Virginia tonight. And I told you before, I'm running for our security. I'm running for our security and our financial security. I'm running for our security of our kids in schools, and I'm running for the security of our communities. You know, as I mentioned before, we know that Virginians are struggling financially, and that they're overtaxed. It happened this year. I will always champion keeping our taxes low, our spending low, so you have more of your hard-earned money. And I'm running for security of education in Virginia, because the Parents' Rights Matter movement was born organically here 2 years ago because parents saw what was happening. And they saw what they care about with their kids getting the knowledge and skills they need in order to be successful in life. We're having different conversations now. Instead of talking about the ABCs, we were talking about CRTs. And that muddles and it brings down our excellence in education. As a mom of 3 and as a former teacher, I will always fight to champion and ensuring that our kids are ready for success. And I will support parents in having the choice of where they send their kids to school, so they will do just that. And I'm running for Senate because I'm running for the security of our communities. We are frightened to see what's happening with crime right now, and that is a direct result of the defund the police movement. I will always stand and back the blue. That is why I have their support. And they need to have the tools and the resources they need in order to keep our community safe. Together, I know we can do this. We can make Virginia more secure. But we cannot have just those who are lovers. We need leaders, people who are willing to stand up and fight for these values. I ask for your support this November, and I thank you again for your time.
Thank you all very much for joining us. The candidates all have tables in the back if you want more information about the